You know, the greatest strategic failure in marketing is something called the propositional illusion. It's this belief that we should start a relationship with a really clear statement of value, but that ignores a fundamental neurological fact. The human brain only grants attention to the visceral pulse of a problem it already feels deep down. For years, we've all been taught that clarity is king, right? Be clear, be concise, state your benefit. We've been told to build this perfect logical argument for why our product is the best. But what if that core belief, the very foundation of modern marketing, is the exact reason most campaigns just fail? What if, in our race to be clear, we've actually been building walls instead of bridges? Today, we're going to dissect a pretty radical idea: that in a world drowning in solutions, the only way to be heard is to stop being clear and start being felt. We're going to explore how to bypass that logical, skeptical brain and speak directly to the nervous system. This is the secret to creating marketing that doesn't just get seen, it gets felt.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we're going to completely dismantle that myth of clarity, the idea that's led so many of us astray. Then we'll get into the market crisis that made all the old rules obsolete, a crisis of saturation you're probably feeling every single day. From there, we'll build the new model, the Somatic-Resonance Engine, and I'll show you exactly how it works. Then we'll dive deep into the science, the neuroscience behind why this approach is so incredibly effective. After that, we get practical, a step-by-step framework to master this technique. And finally, we'll see how this whole shift can take your brand from just being another choice to being an absolute inevitability. By the end of this, you're going to have a completely new lens for how you look at marketing.
So let's start by challenging the most sacred cow in the entire marketing playbook, this idea that a clear value proposition is the key to success. We've been told, and we've believed, that if a customer just understands what you do, they'll buy. It's a nice, simple idea, and it also happens to be profoundly wrong.
This right here, this is the foundational lie. I mean, think about it. You've seen those ads a million times, right? Bright, clean, bold headline promising an all-in-one solution. Millions of dollars are spent chasing this ideal of clarity. The assumption is that the customer is some logical machine, just patiently waiting for the right data to make a decision. But the human brain is not a computer. It's a filtering engine, an ancient survival mechanism, and it's hardwired to ignore claims and save its attention for what actually matters. In that world, clear is just another word for ignored. It's like one more billboard on the highway full of billboards. It might be perfectly designed, but just part of the blur.
And what's so interesting here is the stark contrast. The old way, these declarative claims, it's safe, it's logical. It's the kind of marketing that gets approved by a committee because, it doesn't take any risks. And because of that, it is completely, utterly ignored. It just adds to the background noise, the endless static of the internet. Now, the new way, the visceral pulse, that's risky. It's emotional. It doesn't state a fact, it triggers a feeling, a memory, a physical sensation. It's designed not to be understood, but to be felt in the nervous system, in your gut. One builds static, the other builds brands that are impossible to forget.
So, let's get down to it. Why does this logical approach fail so spectacularly? Well, first, it provides an answer to a question the user hasn't even felt the sting of yet. It's like offering a painkiller to someone who doesn't feel any pain. Their reaction isn't gratitude, it's confusion. Second, when you lead with a claim like, "We're the best," you immediately activate what's called the skeptical, critical brain. That's the analytical part of our mind that loves to poke holes in arguments. It's that little voice that says, "Oh, really? Prove it." You're basically starting a debate instead of a connection. And finally, because it sounds just like every other ad, it gets immediately categorized and filtered out as generic static. Your message is basically dead on arrival.
So, if the old way is so bad, why did it ever work in the first place? And what changed that made it so totally obsolete? See, this isn't just a theory. It's a direct response to a massive shift in the market. The old playbook didn't just get a little less effective, it became a liability, in what we now call the solution saturation crisis.
And this timeline just lays it all out perfectly. In the past, the benefit-first era worked because there were just fewer solutions out there. If you had a problem, a clear value prop was a helpful signal in a pretty quiet landscape. But by 2024, everything had changed. With AI-generated copy and startups everywhere, every single problem was being chased by hundreds of nearly identical solutions. And this saturation created a market-wide propositional callus. Buyers just became numb. This forced the shift to where we are now, the residence-first era, where value isn't about how clear your feature list is, but about your ability to engage someone on a somatic or physical level. It's about who owns the pain the best.
And the data. Well, the data doesn't lie. Metrics like the thumb stop ratio, which is just the percentage of people who actually stop scrolling to look at your ad, tell a brutal, unforgiving story. In the past, a clear benefit-driven ad could reliably stop maybe 90% of its target audience. Think about that, 9 out of 10 people would pause. Today, that same clear approach barely stops 15%.
The ads are technically perfect, but psychologically they're invisible. Their effectiveness didn't just decline, it fell off a cliff. And the market had to find a new way to earn attention.
This is the official diagnosis for our modern attention economy. A callus, right, is hardened skin that forms after repeated friction to protect the body. It's a defense mechanism. Well, the propositional callus is a psychological defense that formed after years of being bombarded with the same marketing messages. Your audience developed an immunity. They see a headline structure they recognize, and their brain automatically files it away as something I can ignore before they even process the words. You can't break through this by shouting louder or being clearer. You have to bypass it completely. You have to find a way to speak to the raw nerve underneath.
Okay, so if the old model is broken, if this propositional callus is a real thing, what replaces it? Well, this brings us to the core mechanism of the new approach, the Somatic-Resonance Engine. Now, this isn't a single tactic or some clever trick. It's a three-part system designed not to persuade the mind, but to sync up with the human nervous system. It's about having a conversation not with the rational brain, but with the body itself.
Step 1 is the micropulse. This is the nervous system's gatekeeper. It is not a headline. It's a 1-second flash of a felt problem. Think of a shaky hand hovering over a delete account button, or the flicker of a cursor on a blank page when a deadline is hours away, or that inbox with 10,000 unread emails bleeding into the weekend. It's a moment of visceral dissonance that creates a physical wince, a tightening in the chest. This pulse doesn't ask for permission to be seen. It neurologically forces the scroll to stop by triggering a flicker of recognition in the deepest, most primitive parts of the brain. It bypasses logic and just says, I see you, I know this feeling.
So once the micropulse has opened that gate and you have their nervous system's attention, you introduce the agitation wave. This is the empathy gate. And this is where it gets really counterintuitive. You don't immediately offer your solution. That's what everyone else does. Instead, you deepen the pain. You show the messy, stressful 11 p.m. reality of that problem. You show the consequences, the missed deadlines, the strained relationships, the quiet moments of despair. Now, this isn't about manipulation. It's about demonstrating a profound, almost uncomfortable level of understanding. It builds an instant bond because you're no longer a company trying to sell something. You're the one who finally gets their struggle.
And only now, after creating and deepening all this tension, after making them feel seen, do you open the relief gate. This is the Catharsis Bridge. Your product isn't introduced as a list of features. It's positioned as the clear, obvious path to relief from the tension you just made them feel. It's not a solution in some abstract sense. It is the bridge from that painful reality you mirrored back to them to a state of calm and control. The sale doesn't happen because you persuaded them. It happens because you became the architect of their relief.
So why is this engine so powerful? This isn't just clever copywriting or some creative gimmick. The Somatic-Resonance Engine works because it's engineered to leverage two fundamental principles of human psychology and neuroscience. It works because it's aligned with how we are biologically wired to see the world and connect with each other.
The first principle is the power of mirror neurons. These are these fascinating brain cells that fire both when we do something and when we see someone else do that same thing. It's why you physically wince when you see someone get hurt. By pulsing a visceral image of pain, that cluttered inbox, that shaky hand, you are not making a claim, you are triggering a shared experience directly in the viewer's brain. And this is crucial because it deactivates their skepticism filter. The brand is no longer an aggressor making a sales pitch, it's a mirror reflecting their own reality back at them. Trust isn't earned through logic, it's created through shared biology. The second principle is the Zeigarnik Effect. This is our psychological tendency to remember unfinished tasks better than finished ones. It's why cliffhangers in TV shows are so addicting. By pulsing the pain and then agitating it without immediately giving the answer, you create an open psychological loop. The brain hates unresolved tension. It craves closure. This compels the user to stay, not because they want to buy your product, but because they desperately want relief from the dissonance you've created. Your brand becomes the only path to that relief, creating a deep psychological moat that your competitors, with their clear, logical solutions, just can't cross.
Okay, so we get the crisis, we get the mechanism, and we get the science. But how do you actually do this? How do you move from theory to practice and turn this idea into a repeatable, scalable system for generating attention? Well, it all comes down to a disciplined four-step framework.
Let's break this down. These 4 steps aren't just a checklist. They represent a whole new way of thinking. They're designed to move you from being a marketer who sells to becoming a resonator who connects on a biological level. It's about being systematic in your pursuit of emotional connection. It's about turning an art into a science.
The first 2 steps are all about creation and immersion. Step 1.
architect the sensory hook. This means you have to stop thinking in headlines and start thinking in visions of friction. What does the problem actually look like in a quiet, private moment of frustration? You need to capture that sensory experience. Step 2. Engineer the agitation slope. A huge mistake is to rush to the solution. Don't do it. You need to spend at least twice as much time on the problem as you do on the solution. Your job is to gently twist the knife, to explore the consequences until the wound becomes undeniable.
And the second half of this is all about optimization and results. Step 3. Automate the resonance audit. This isn't guesswork, it's science. You have to test your pulses like a scientist, using data to find the specific frequency of pain that resonates most deeply with each part of your audience. Then, step 4. Measure relief conversion. All this emotional connection is useless if it doesn't lead to action. If people are watching your whole ad, feeling the pain, but not clicking, that's a crystal clear signal. Your Catharsis Bridge is too weak. The promise of relief isn't strong enough. You know you've mastered this when your pulse and your profit move in perfect lockstep.
So, after all this work, after understanding the crisis, building the engine, mastering the framework, what's the ultimate outcome? What does this new model actually achieve for a brand? Why go through all the trouble?
This is the core insight right here. We live in a world of infinite, cheap, AI-generated answers. Any competitor can copy your features. Any marketing team can copy your value prop. But what they can't copy is the brand that best defines the question, the brand that owns the pain. When you start with a pulse of emotion, you completely short-circuit the comparison process. You stop being one option on a spreadsheet and you become the only path to relief they can imagine. You become an inevitability.
This sentence just perfectly captures the entire shift. The old model was all about pushing people through a series of logical steps, a funnel that felt forced and unnatural. The problem pulse is about creating a powerful gravitational pull. You establish a tension so profound that the customer is actively pulled towards the value you offer because it represents the resolution they now crave. It's a fundamental change from persuasion to magnetism.
And so, I'll leave you with this final thought. Take a look at your own marketing, your own communication. Are your messages just adding to the noise, to the endless static of safe, logical claims that everyone has learned to ignore? Or are you creating resonant pulses that connect with your audience on a human, biological level? In today's market, in the age of the solution saturation crisis, that is the only question that really matters. The future belongs to those who understand that the most powerful connection isn't one of logic, but of feeling. It's time to stop building static and start building brands.